Okay.
Make sure your microphones are on.
I'd like to call to the order the Villa Rica Historical Preservation Commission.
Turn your mic on. Press it. Little red light.
All right, we'll try this one more time. I'd like to call to order the Villa Rica Historical Preservation Commission. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. I hope you all have a very great and a wonderful Happy New Year.
Thank you. You as well, sir.
Thank you. We'll first go with the adoption of the agenda. I'd like you to take a look at the agenda that's been provided to you. And if you have any major issues, I'd like to voice them now. If not, I'd like to adopt the agenda as printed.
I move to adopt.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Agenda has been adopted. We'll start with old business, the approval of the July 12, 2016 minutes. Do you all have a copy?
Yes.
Yes. I read this earlier. I move to adopt.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 The agenda and the minutes have been approved. The Main Street report.
Where's Chris?
I think he bailed because
Your record?
because we've had 2 in a row that we couldn't continue.
Oh.
And he showed to both of those.
Uh-oh.
I'd like,
Well,
We'll flagellate him with whips and chains next time as well.
I'd like to table the Main Street report until our next meeting.
Okay.
New business. Review of the bylaws and design guidelines. These have been attached to the documents that you received here last week. This is a pretty hefty line item.
Is this the 3-page thick book that I received?
I believe so.
Okay. I have attempted to work my way through it. I've not finished it as of yet, but it looks to be in order.
I know that our guidelines are basically set within the historical specifications by the state of Georgia. However, each community has the right to adopt them to some degree within the community's needs and requirements and the basic history of the each unique community that's out there. At this time, has there been any request by the city for any modification of the existing guidelines?
have we tried to publish them or promote changes? Or, I mean, honestly, I'm seeing this document for the first time, and I'm the city manager.
They're on the website, but that doesn't mean they've been on there for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I myself haven't seen them, and they've never come up in discussion, even with staff.
This seems to have been guidelines that have been in place for quite some time.
So you're not looking to change them?
As to me personally, no, I'm not looking to change anything.
Because, I mean, if y'all are looking to change them, then I would say, yes, we need to make sure we vet them and the public understands, because, as you know, whenever you're dealing with people's property, they want to have some say.
Yes, indeed.
But even so, no, I haven't seen the design guidelines for downtown. That's amazing. I had always wondered whether or not you all actually have ever adopted any.
The guidelines, to my understanding, were adopted in days past and were quite comprehensive.
The initial guidelines were a composite of guidelines with several communities near and far Villa Rica. That was the base point.
Right.
From everything from signage to restoration of existing exterior finishes. Okay. The one thing that these guidelines were really A-specific to, more so, was the downtown commercial district, storefronts. they haven't been expanded to the point for residential to some degree. There is mention of residential finishes, some limited guidelines out on the outside, but not an in-depth modification to residential.
I would like to see that expanded in the future. That's something that we could take under consideration, I think. Residential, I don't want to really say code, but residential suggestions, so to speak.
What I would like is for these plans, and I agree with David, they're maybe not the best kept secret in Villa Rica, but they're somewhat close. Your master plan design group, I don't know if they've had a chance to look at these or not. And I'd like to get their input on these specific guidelines, and then were there any major modifications that they would require or anything that they need us to tighten these guidelines up on. Most cases, what we're seeing is that where you really see the modification is actually in signage or canopies. And we're seeing that. At that point, these are somewhat guidelines on those particular elements, but they're not detailed. So if we could couple the master plan for the city with our design guidelines to make sure they're incorporated in them, or any modifications that they may require, I would be open for that at this time.
That sounds like a very forward-thinking idea. I like that.
I'd strongly encourage you to maybe consider a joint HPC and maybe a DDA and a Main Street meeting to facilitate some conversation about that. Because we do have to remain on the same page, especially as we move forward to looking at even the comprehensive plan update for next year. So when you look at growth and development, even in the downtown corridor, these design guidelines, we always keep referring to, oh, you can't do that because you got to, go consult HPC. The guidelines, one, I want to make sure we check the minutes for the adoption, because we should have, a footnote on here as an adoption date. The second thing I want to do is check the minutes to make sure that the HPC bylaws have been adopted by the council. If not, we want to go through the normal process, which is we'll send them to the city attorney, have them review them, and then once you all are comfortable with whatever you've hashed out and you're ready to bless them, then send them to the council for its adoption. And then that way, everything's blessed and it's prim and proper, if you will. And we've done that with a number of the other boards. Some of it is just retro catch up, so that you have full authority backing you.
Understood. Well, I agree 100% with you on that, David. The review of the bylaws, I would like to be able to table that to the next meeting. But it is a priority the next meeting that we approve or disapprove or modify the existing bylaws in place.
I move to move the bylaw exception to the next meeting. I'm not sure how to phrase this, sorry. Pursuant to our approval.
That will give us some additional time for review and put it as the highest priority for the next meeting. Do you find that would that be acceptable? And assuming that we have our meetings every month, that should give us a February approval for these bylaws.
Do you want to have a approval by the review by the city attorney?
Well, you all want to have it in the most final form as you can before we send it to the city attorney. So what I can do is between now and the next meeting, actually also we'll go through and review. And it would be helpful if you all sort of bring your marked up red line documents and do it work session style, where we can sort of make sure that we all go through it and get a finalized document. Once you have a finalized document that you're comfortable with, at that point, we'll send it over to the city attorney and say, okay, any issues, problems here? And then from there, you can move it on to the city council.
Why don't you take back your motion and I'll make it for you?
I revoke that.
Motion to move the bylaw review to the next meeting. We're to come with the understanding that we'll have have a full discussion, at which time we will then be ready to send to review for council, and then at the March meeting, our March meeting, we'll be able to set up final passage and then send to city council for review and consideration for their April agenda item.
Second that motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried. I can't stress the importance of this review, and I call this very good housekeeping on our part.
Right, good.
So I thank you for bringing this to our attention. So, all right. Because of some information I'd like to work with for future meetings, I'd like to table the discussion of the Pine Mountain Museum. Unless there's any.
What were we, just in general? Catch me up.
Yeah, that was my question.
No,
too.
I'm
It's
kind of
like-
new to the crew here, so why don't you catch us up?
It's like, what are we postponing?
Yeah,
Right. Basically, I want to understand what the Pine Mountain Museum is actually doing, with the ramifications and what kind of direction it's going to go.
Okay.
And I don't.
and what our oversight would be in it,
Absolutely.
in the historical site.
And what you may want to do then is you may want to make a board request so that we actually have the Pine Mountain Museum manager present at the next meeting, so that he can give you a presentation. Also, you all will want to get a little more tied in because as the adoption of the Douglas County SPLOST, there is money that was approved for enhancing Pine Mountain Museum, and so they'll be looking to potentially expand that. Not saying that this is going to occur, but for instance, one of the things that was put out there was potentially a gold mine themed putt-putt golf. There's been some of the sentiment that, folks will come out, partake in some of the history, do the panning, ride the train, and they're like, "Oop, done that, been there," So they want, obviously the petting zoo, which I think could be greatly expanded and finessed. There's folks that just come out to see the koi fish, for instance, but there ought to be something that will continually to bring people back to the park. We just don't know what that is yet.
I tend to agree with you, David. The park as it is currently is a 1 or 2 time visit. The thrill ride, the Christmas ride, those are both great, but hopefully we can bring people back monthly or bi-monthly rather than biannually. Sorry.
Currently in the 2016 Douglas County SPLOST on the capital expenditure for Pine Mountain was $200,000,
For which years?
and that was for the expansion and site re-engineering.
Yeah, I think there's other funds as well. In fact, I'm usually not this prepared, but
Uh-oh, you're in trouble,
I
Larry.
think, let me,
We've been
sure enough, I just happen to have the entire, let's see, renovation improvement of scenic railroad and CP Huntington train engine number 310 at Pine Mountain Museum, Gold Museum at Stockmar Park, $150,000. Expansion of Pine Mountain Gold Museum at Stockmar Park, $149,999. The reason it's $99 is because in order to balance the SPLOST to an even amount, we took $1 away from that expansion. So collectively, there is just $1 shy of $300,000 assigned to renovations, improvements at that park over the next 5 years.
One of the things that I am curious about is to what level of participation should the Historical Commission be involved with this? And that's really my open book question right now, David.
Well, I think if we were to have Wesley, in fact, Wesley shares a lot of historic preservation and things. He's a former federal and state park ranger. So I think if you haven't had an opportunity to meet him, I think you'll enjoy engaging with him and seeing some of the changes that are occurring out there. I've also asked staff to start working on a profit and loss statement so that entity is actually operated more of a business, in line with a business, as opposed to, because it is a huge part of history, but it's also a tourist attraction to the city, and it's one of our biggest assets.
Well, I fully agree, and it's sometimes an unknown gem here in Billerica until people get a chance to go visit it.
Very much like the design guidelines.
Very much, absolutely. So, with that, looking forward to hearing some information about the Pine Mountain in the next meeting, if possible. All right. The next order of business will be the discussion of the comprehensive plan. I think you have a copy of that.
No, the comp plan's too big. When you said it's included in here, I'm like, huh?
I apologize.
It's the comp plan.
I had the electronic copy of it.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
didn't want to include it because it was
Right.
harsh.
Right, absolutely.
I will tell you that
$100,000.
we're in the final throes of the budget, and if the council approves it, there will be $100,000 assigned this year. So we'll actually have a professional consultant that will work with all the factions and groups and stakeholders in order to pull together the comprehensive plan. That has to be done and submitted for 2018. So that process will soon get kicked off shortly after budget adoption, because we have to get started on that. There'll be very much, if you participate in any aspects of the RSVP Renaissance, it sort of goes through the same process. There's a lot of charrettes, a lot of public involvement, a lot of review of existing documents, charters, codes, guidelines, things of that, land use planning. So it's a very involved a process to come out with sausage on the other end.
From the Historical Commission point of view, what impact can we have with this, David?
You'll be one of the stakeholders. In fact, planning and zoning are two key as well as the Main Street, because think about it, you have a downtown master plan. Your downtown also is with the downtown overlay. So your downtown, your economic is a huge part of your economic development and comprehensive plan. So as a stakeholder process, you will be in one of those stakeholder groups, as well as the Main Street program, as well as the DDA, as well as the planning and zoning, of course, the board and council. You'll most likely at some point get to play with building blocks and start really looking at your overall, what's good, what's bad, what would you like not, things of that nature. The goal is to have a true, professionally done comp plan. So,
From the
did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. From an access point of view, electronically, I have a copy of that plan. Do you have that also, or the ability
No,
to
I
access
don't.
that? All right. How would be the easiest way we could do this?
Isn't it on the web?
It's on the web.
Yeah.
Under
If you could tag it for me,
I can send it to you
thank you.
tomorrow.
same,
Yeah.
Rhonda.
Do you have a copy? Okay, you too.
You'll probably send it to the whole council. Yeah. Or just tell Larry. Larry never has anything to do, so he just randomly will send documents.
I mail my friends.
My wife asked what I'd done to my friend. I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, he didn't bring you any okra anymore." I'm like, "Growing season's over." But we did get a Christmas card from him. Did you ask me for my home address?
Q Public.
Oh.
Find anything, you know.
Well, I was trying to remember. It's like, well,
Look, you of the electronic age.
I know. I just thought that was interesting. It's like, he's like, and she's like, "So who's this?" And it's like, "He's Okra Man." She's like, "Oh, okay. I know who he is."
It's an amazing world out there. My main concern, when all this comes together, is this something you were looking about these meetings sometime in the middle of summer, David, or what on a time frame? When do you think they're going to happen?
Once the council, because I'll utilize all of my administrative resources and executive assistant staff, we'll create an RFP and basically get a firm, and then we'll have stakeholder groups to actually review the comp plan proposals and then pick a firm, and then we'll take it to council and get it adopted and approved. I'm hoping by April, we certainly should have a firm selected and engaged, and to get started with that process. It'd be interesting. The one group that I'm most interested in talking with on the comp plan as a stakeholder group is going to be our high school students and our millennials. It's going to be rather interesting. I'm very eager in their feedback. And the reason I say that is the number one thing I hear from folks over and over and over, there's nothing to do in Villa Rica. It's just so boring here. And I'm like, we have lots to do in Villa Rica. So I'm very eager to find out exactly what it is that they want to do other than Pokemon.
I do have to say that and this is totally off subject here, but the Hart House, the Villa Rica Area Historical Society Inc., aka the Hart House, has put forth plans for the Hart House complex to be a living museum. It's something that the group is studying. It would be interactive. It would be people out there on specific dates, of course, with spinning and weaving and growing and don't let me say this out loud, but goats and
chickens
chickens.
and oh my.
Oh my. Livestock.
You have to fence it in.
To interact with the public. It's a thought that's being thrown out there. There's also an alternate thought that I'm not sure if any of you have ever been to the Cherokee Nation
Casino? Yeah, I've been there.
Casino. There's a play that they do, Unto These Hills. They've been doing it for years and years and years and years. It's put on by local residents, and it's a big draw for tourism in the area. And that's something that's been tossed out there for the maybe drama club of the Villa Rica High School or the Beta Club or one of those clubs. So the Historical Society versus the Historical Commission is working on ideas to pull people into the area with history. Just saying.
Hey, it may work. You don't know until you try it.
Yeah.
Try before you buy. That's why those batteries on those toys are all dead at the Toys R Us. No, you never know. I see y'all are going to barbecue next week.
Yes, that's our regular monthly meeting.
In Temple.
Garnering ideas. The courthouse is not available that day, and one of the board members is not available for a Thursday meeting. So trying to move it to an alternate day. Hopefully when the new library is open. Any idea when that might be?
Yeah.
When the new library is... Okay. When the new library is available, we'll be hoping to garner a night per month to use the new library until the Hart House is hopefully functional. So, just, there's ideas out there. We're thinking.
I've never been to this barbecue restaurant, so.
You'll like it.
Which one?
John, in Temple.
So that's really the only update stuff we have on the comp plan at this point. I mean, I've been through my share of comp plans, so it's always fun. It's always intriguing. I think folks learn stuff that they never knew about our great city.
Villa Rica is a vibrant little town, and we have lots to offer. We just need to package ourselves correctly or properly or outgoingly or whichever terminology you choose to use.
Well, it has changed. I've been here since 2000. It's changed dramatically.
It has.
What's unique about Villa Rica, not unique, it's very common with most Georgia communities, it's hard to find native Villa Ricans because we have such an influx of people from all over the country. And the one thing that when they actually take the time to look at our history, they're excited. And David, getting us so we can position to talk to the future developers of this comprehensive plan, I think is very, very important. I know the millennials, the first thing they check out on Villa Rica is what it looks like electronically. And I know this will be part of that package. So it's fun to see the growth of this town and be part of it. And I thank you for allowing us to participate in that. And I think we're all looking forward to checking this out and maybe have a little piece of the action.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great process. You don't. Some folks never get the opportunity to truly actually go through soup to nuts on a project like a comp plan or comp plan update. But the interesting thing is the mood of the environment right now is when you talk about strategic plans, which folks are like saying, visioning. Versus strategic plans is it's hard to say where the city will be in 3 or 5 years simply because things are changing very rapidly. We're experiencing that level of growth right now. So it's funny reading the current comp plan and saying, wow, that's interesting. Because at the end of the day, a comp plan, some folks will say, it's just a fluid document. I like to always put it up there as a Bible and say, now, as you all adopted in your comp plan, this or this contradicts, what's in your comp plan. It should be a guiding document. And so I'll just leave it at that because once this document's done, just like I do with the others, I always try to remind the councils and the governing bodies, in your adopted plan, it's not my plan, it's y'all's plan, y'all adopted it, so.
Well, I know with all the things that go on within a city every day, sometimes looking out in the future, it gets kind of cloudy.
It does.
And your guidance on this is very welcome.
No, thank you.
Very welcome. All right, I believe that we've covered and been brought up to speed with the comprehensive plan and looking forward to our participation. Next line of business is the establishment of the historical districts. Going back to the original design guidelines, we initially created a district here that's basically our commercial side, one district here in
The historic downtown.
That's correct. We have funding that's been available for us. For us to move forward, we need to do the historical surveys in individual districts and then eventually formulate these as districts, whether residential or different divisions of downtown. Where we're at right now is the fact that I believe we're kind of working with, we've been approved for a grant. We're building the structure to put the grant together so we can make it work for us. But it's basically centered on doing the historical survey of the rest of downtown Villa Rica, all right, or whatever we can afford within the guidelines of the grant funds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's where we're at right now. The RFP will be the first thing that they're looking for to see, has that been submitted, and are we following the guidelines that makes this grant work for us? So we follow whatever the state has asked us to do. All right? It's a $4,000 grant. I do not believe $4,000 will be capable enough, even with the city funding that's added to us, to do the complete survey that we're looking for. So part of this is identification of the Nest Historical District that this survey is actually going to be working on. I would ask that, David, can you give us some input on what direction the city would like us to go as far as a survey? Do they want additional downtown, or would they like us to delve into residential areas?
Given that the city's most recently adopted the downtown master plan, I would be more confident saying, stay downtown first before you move out into residential, because it's the area that's getting the most attention and most money behind it, and most momentum. I think it would be very, very encouraging to do that, especially with the fact that you see the Main Street program doing the boost grants and the facade grants. It's also another reason why you'll want to have those joint meetings and follow up with them on priorities.
I tend to agree with you, David, with a small caveat, however. The cemeteries that are within the Villa Rica city limits, I would like to see perhaps those few areas added to the arena of interest, maybe. I think there's 3. I might be wrong. There could be more than that. But those are part of history and are very limited spaces and might very well be of interest to a larger number of people.
Are you saying the historic cemeteries within the city limits?
Yes, within the city limits.
Well,
2 are ours, and there's a third.
I mean, there's one, you've got 2 on Douglas County side. You've got the one at Punkintown. You've got Hillcrest. You got Garden of Rest, but I don't know how historic Garden of Rest is. I don't know enough.
I'm thinking more
data.
along the lines of historical rather
Yeah,
than
yeah. So it's
just
Garden of
within the city
Rest.
limits.
I mean, it's a Hillcrest.
All right.
So definitely Hillcrest. Definitely the one out on Mirror Lake Parkway. Definitely the one at Punkintown.
I'd like to see those perhaps included in that resolution.
Yeah. Do you have to have some agreements on because you have property owners on 2 of them that you'll have to finesse some of that because 2 of them are very private. Although I do think that the Douglas County inmates maintain the one, if I'm not mistaken, on Douglas County side,
Where?
on the Parkway.
Okay, pardon.
Yeah. Have you ever seen it? Been out there?
No, that's why I'm going, oh, no.
Yeah. If you come from Stockmar Park, driving towards the dam, it's on the left. But you gotta drive slow to see the sign. And it's very, very nice. There's nowhere to really pull off. I just park in the middle of the street, but put my flashers on.
If you might, the cemetery committee is currently looking at a historic site designation for Hillcrest. And it's very much in the talking phase for the preliminary application. And I'll try to encourage them next Tuesday to go ahead and make the application and go on with this. There's this fear of failure, but you aren't going to fail until you ask, and they just need to go ahead and get on with it and ask for it. Also, there have been some things that have been done for them without them asking, and that was in beautification. And sometimes that'll come to us too, in the overall scheme of historic preservation, is that things will come available to you, and we have to be able to, accept that. and work it in. So,
The two caveats we're working at is a designation of a historical district.
Mhm.
All right. The historical district is being stretched a little bit with the cemetery.
It is.
no, well, we agree.
However, I would support the concept of, with each one of these cemeteries, to work with the individual owners or whoever remains them to try and get them as a designated historical district.
Absolutely.
And I think that could be a project that we'd be looking at for this year,
Excellent.
because our surveying aspect will be down dramatically, and we could probably get that as a self-imposed historical survey out there. We can use the survey funds that we're getting in the grant as finishing up downtown without having to spread it too far in too many different directions.
Very thinly, yeah.
So I like the idea. I support it. I'd like to bring in who's ever managing these individual areas, and let's talk to them and see what tools that we can find to help them.
For the cemeteries,
We do have a
We should-
cemetery historic commission, well, not historic, but a cemetery commission that is working diligently with the different areas. So, yes, that's totally possible.
There are tools out there that we might be able to access to help them move along and accomplish what we're trying to do.
Good.
I think getting these cemeteries on as a historical designation is extremely important.
Absolutely.
Great idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're able to do two different projects here at the same time with the funds that we have available. All right. We'll use the self-funding for the private cemeteries if possible, and use our grant funds for the Ranger downtown. I believe that would easily cover the downtown district for what the fundings we have left. Okay. Is there any other directions that you would like us to see, that you would like us to go into?
Not at this time. No, I don't think so.
Well, this would be a good start. So, very good. All right, I'm going to assume, to take this a little bit further, David has reached out to the state to facilitate the RFP and the acquisition of this, and I believe by the next meeting, we should have some answers from the state.
I'm hoping sooner.
So we'll be in good shape with that. That's key for us to allow to move forward with this. I would assume it will probably take 6 months to a year to finish this survey, so that's probably the timelines that we're dealing with. So, all right. All right, discussion of Fullerville.
you gonna talk about the water tower or take her tearing down the building?
Well, I'd like to open it to everything that we would like to discuss about Fullerville tonight.
That's a long discussion.
Mm-hmm.
What is the current status of the mill out there? Is that still in a restoration point of view? We were under the impression in the last meeting that someone had actually acquired the factory out there.
Oh, the old armory?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the Preston folks. Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, there's lots of activity going on out there. Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't think they've acquired it. I think, as I recall, I think it was under a lease. But I could be mistaken. Brian Preston and the Lamont Luther group have been out there. In fact, they even held a festival out there, a fundraising festival. And even HGTV, or what's that gardening thing? Is it HGTV?
HG.
Okay. They actually, they've been constructing tiny houses, and they've been out to film a family that they're building a tiny house for. And then there's also another production shoot that's recurrent out there. To me, there's a whole renaissance that's about to happen, and you have to preserve the history, because you had that going on. Within the next couple of years, you're going to have the North Loop, so you're going to have that dynamic change. You've got the Fullerville Trailhead project that we've broken ground for, and that's going to change some dynamics out there. You have Flowers Bakery that's adopted that stretch of road for litter cleanup, and they've been engaging the public. the Rise and Shine group, that's the business networking, has looked at, we're in the throes of discussions about a annual nonprofit adoption of a project. So at this point, on the table is the Fullerville Mission with their whatever the house is called next to it, temporary housing, doing that as an annual project. You're about to, of course, soon have the on the other side the library opened up. Plans have been submitted for the $40 million expansion of Tanner Medical. So you have some bookends that are really going to change the dynamics of Fullerville. Not to mention, we're about to pave Rockmart Road 101 through there. So all collectively, and I know Mayor Pro Tem McPherson is very eager on trying to do some improvements, but you know those really have to be community grassroots, you know, to take hold. So you got a lot of property owners out there that have rental properties that may or may not be interested, but there's a lot of economic incentives for them to, you know, refurbish that whole area. And then also I understand that, you know, the new library is going to have several display cases, so they're looking at, you know, being able to showcase some of the history there. And I will say, again, another reason for a joint talk with Main Street is there's been some talks about having an actual museum, potentially taking the decommissioned library and turning it into a museum. That's a Thomas Dorsey museum / Fullerville / Asa Coca-Cola, you know, / whatever it needs to be to get whatever funding's necessary. So those I've seen as sort of cursory discussions. So that's pretty much all I know about Fullerville at this moment.
My hat's off to the city because it takes management to start the ball rolling. And Fullerville's come a long way in a short amount of time. I think it's going to be an interesting growth point for Villa Rica in the next 5-6 years. It's an interesting concept of the small house concept, which I watch television quite a bit, and I see this all the time, compared to actually some of the size of some of the buildings out there that are in existence that need some help. So, but the economic energy is there, and I think you're going to see that moving forward. I'm curious to see what the comprehensive plan has for its design out there and direction.
I have a couple of ideas on this. I had my property recently surveyed this past year, and I have a second driveway. And on that second driveway, an old survey showed 10 little shotgun houses, which I'm thinking were probably what we would consider today a tiny house. And this was several decades ago, of course. So the concept was,
Sure they weren't outhouses?
I'm sorry? Possibly, maybe. They were slightly larger than tiny, you know, but on the other hand, there's something that keeps coming up that really just digs at me. And Villa Rica, the city of Villa Rica, even in a historical sense, needs a brand. I know that we were the first gold rush in the state of Georgia, and that's great, but Dahlonega got it first. Even if we were first, they have the brand of being the first gold rush. Just like Vidalia has the onions. The city of Villa Rica needs a brand, and I don't know if it needs to be Thomas Dorsey or Asa Chandler or what, but we need a brand.
See, that's interesting you bring that up, which is another reason the boards need to talk to you more on, because the downtown and Main Street have all commissioned marketing and branding through as part of the tourism product. And see, again, not sure who they have as their stakeholders, but, that Main Street board is an eclectic board. And so I know on the tourism side, and it's either the DMO or the tourism side, but Chris Pike is, at the center of that, because I've seen, iterations, colors, logos, things like that. I've seen designs. Nothing's finalized yet, but yet another reason to, bring them and waterboard them, because, he's holding out on y'all.
I agree. There's several ideas that I personally have. My personal favorite is organic, just because that's where I come from. Natural, organic, chemical-free, all that good stuff. But perhaps the city should, and even in a historical sense, pursue a Mayberry theme, or, something. People really, really like Andy Griffin, and, going back to the 50s and the Fonzie and all that stuff. And I don't know what the brand should be, but we really need to dig deep and go back to our history and find this brand that would make us stand out of all the other cities. I mean, onions and gold and...
Let's go back to cotton farming.
I don't know if we want to go to cotton farming.
That's why we should have like a sock fest.
Or a sock fest, absolutely. I mean, do you know how big the shag dance contest is in the Carolinas?
No, but it was great. I thought it was a comedy night. I laughed so hard.
Oh, no, it
I was
is
just
a
watching.
thing. It is an absolute
Oh, I know. Well,
So, sorry to
No,
wander off subject here.
yeah. Elisa Doyle has her daddy's old sewing equipment, made all the socks and everything in the mill.
Yeah,
So
I worked in the mills when I was a kid. Sorry.
I told her if you could get that sucker working and make some socks, man, that'd be cool.
one thing that's a common theme is our enthusiasm for the development of Billerica.
Absolutely.
And it's very heartwarming because it's our town.
It is.
And I know that there's this magical brand out there somewhere, and I know we'll know it when we see it. But I agree, David, allowing us and getting us all together to help participate with these other commissions right now is very important.
Yeah, I know. One of the things the mayor plans to do is he's planning to do a joint meeting with all of the boards. We've just
awesome.
been having to wait until we can get room because, although this seems like enough room, So, but he does plan to have a joint meeting of all of the boards and commissions, just so that we're all on the same page, communicating, everybody knows each other, and so that, he wants to be able to move forward collectively as opposed to piecemeal.
Absolutely.
Well, that's great. And last thing we had talked about Fullerville was the water tower. I don't know the current status of that, other than they're pretty expensive to move and they're pretty expensive to maintain. So I'm going to assume right now that tower is not in a demolition permit mode. So until it gets into that direction, I would challenge the board that we have enough on the plate right now with different areas. But if it did show up, I would like to look at it as soon as possible. All right. The next full commission. Alicia sent me an application for an individual that would like to join our board. I'll have that information circulated.
I saw that. Looks wonderful.
Yes. I don't know if you had a chance. Is there something that you need approval from our commission?
A recommendation for council action so that we can put it on the next and tell them what your recommendation was?
I highly approve. She totally has the credentials.
I agree. I'd like to put forth a recommendation or a nomination that we recommend her for a commission position.
I motion to approve your recommendation.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. All right, the last line item is an architect on the board. I deal with a lot of historical commissions around the state, and an architect on board is an extremely valuable position. It gives us a lot of free advice, for lack of a better term. And we also, the architect will bring back some information to us that allows us to make better decisions and recommendations and design guidelines. I know that I have talked to several people, and has there been any architects that's been interested or has approached the city that might be interested to be on the historical commission?
And that I'm aware of. There's been lots of architects that want to do business with the city. That I've had lots of inquiries about.
David, I've had the same issue you had there. What kind of work can we get? Yeah. One of the things that I might like to consider is Georgia Tech has, through their architectural school, we might be able to, an allocation of time, that if we approach them for someone that might be majoring in historical architectural renovation. So what I'd like to do is contact Georgia Tech, if this board will approve that, and try to get someone that's continuing their education. If nothing more, we can bring them on as a pro tem member to help us facilitate any questions.
And if not Georgia Tech, then
West Georgia
then
or
another institution.
Absolutely. yes.
somewhere.
Yes.
University of
Don't limit
Florida.
your Scope, yeah.
Yeah, I don't, don't, West Georgia, Georgia Tech, anywhere. So if nothing else, a summer internship, for lack of a better term. So a little bit, at least that information might be getting out. So I'd like to contact those schools and see if there's anybody available.
Sure.
For us to take a look at.
Go for it.
All right?
Yes, absolutely.
Report back.
And invite them to our meeting, and we can interview them and see if it makes some sense for us.
Sure.
Okay. All right, right now, the discussion of miscellaneous items. Is there any items that fall in that category?
You know, the only thing that I'm concerned about, and y'all can give some guidance, obviously, it's been months now since the facade off the McCurry building came down, and no repairs have been made. And, I know the city sent a letter asking for structural integrity and things like that. We need to follow up, but, from your guideline standpoint, how long are we going to allow that just to remain? I mean, it's a historic building. It's like one of the two oldest longest operating businesses in Villa Rica. It's the old historic bank building. So I think it's probably high time we maybe go pay a visit and just chat.
Absolutely. There's been yellow tape out in front of it for quite some time. It's unsightly.
Yeah.
It does not
Code enforcement.
portray what we want it to be.
I like the plan of having a meeting. I think hopefully that will go a long way. I would ask for the city's recommendation. We can't have more than one person there at this meeting, or we would technically, three of us, would be a forum there, for lack of a better.
Yeah, you can only have two at a time.
So, two of us. I would like to volunteer to be part of that meeting, if possible, and I'd like to be joined by either one of you.
Whichever, it just dependent upon the day. I'd be happy to, or I'm sure Larry would as well.
Yeah, just call.
And the purpose of the meeting is to basically show our concern for what's going to happen, and what type of timeframes are going to be involved. do I need to send that letter, or can that letter be sent from the city?
You can write up the letter, and then we should jointly sign it so that, because as the HPC, you're advisory in a lot, but if we joint sign the letter, then
Carries a bit more weight.
Then you have the administrative side then.
Want to do it properly, so that's the main thing. All right, I don't think that requires a vote from the commission. All right. All right, let's move on. Public comment. All right.
I've really been interested in everything that you had to say. I would say, I said that Pine Mountain Park was interesting. I can remember going to the cemetery on Pumpkin Town Road, and before it was even cleaned up, the sign up there, because that always fascinated me, with being a Civil War cemetery. So all of the things that you mentioned, I've been most interested in. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you attending our meeting this evening, and you're always welcome. All right, well, I believe we've reached line item number 5, adjournment. Unless there's any other information or any other motions that wish to be carried out this time, I'd like to adjourn the Historical Preservation Commission meeting. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second. Good leave. Hold their feet.
I need to talk. I'll get a second.